On that gray morning in Rome, something in the air felt different. Windows were ajar, yet no breeze entered. The bells of St. Peter's Square rang earlier than usual, and within a quiet room, the most beloved man of faith made a final request. He didn't ask for gold or speeches, not for crowds or words of solace. He simply asked for a reunion, a simple gesture involving a being who doesn't speak, a four-legged friend who had always understood him in silence. And it was in that moment, seconds from the final farewell, that something happened, something that would touch the hearts of those who witnessed it, and that you are about to discover. That morning in Rome, the sky was opaque. The clouds didn't herald a storm, but the entire Vatican knew something profound was about to occur. There was no commotion, no rush, just the sound of bells resonating slightly slower, as if asking for silence. Inside one of the most guarded rooms, lying under light sheets with hands clasped, rested the man who guided millions with his voice but now preferred silence. The Holy Father wasn't speaking much anymore. His eyes remained closed, not in absence, but in contemplation. Around him, doctors, aides, and clergy watched with reverence. Every small gesture carried the weight of eternity. It was then, between one prayer and another, that he slowly opened his eyes, looked at a nearby sister, and said in a broken, sacred voice, "Bring Balthazar." The sister froze for a second. The others exchanged confused glances. "Balthazar?" a cardinal asked quietly. Was it a priest, a visitor? But the Pope's gaze was clear, leaving no doubt. Balthazar was a dog, the faithful four-legged companion who had been with him for years. A medium-sized white dog with gentle eyes and immense heart. Balthazar no longer lived at the Vatican. Since the Holy Father began to fall ill, the animal had been taken to Castel Gandolfo, cared for by an elderly nun, Sister Domenica, who fed him, petted him, and spoke soft words like prayers. But the dog was never the same. He didn't play, barely ate, slept beside an old cassock, and sometimes whimpered softly, like one feeling an absence they couldn't name. Stories like this, revealing deep connections and quiet love, touch the soul. We want to share that feeling with you directly. In our next video, we'll be sending a special prayer and blessing to viewers who comment. Imagine hearing your name, your city, mentioned, creating a bond within our community. If you'd like to receive the special acknowledgement, please leave your name and city in the comments, and show your support with a like on this video. Thank you for being here with us. The Pope's simple, final request was for his dog, Balthazar. To understand the depth of this bond, we must travel back long before the Vatican walls, back to the streets of Buenos Aires, where a young boy named Jorge Mario first learned a lesson about the divine spark in every living creature that would shape his entire life and papacy. To understand that simple, profound request, one must go back much further in time, long before the Vatican, long before the crowds, the speeches, the white vestments. One must return to Argentina, when Jorge Mario was just a boy with rosy cheeks and curious eyes, running through the streets of Buenos Aires. The son of humble, deeply religious parents, Jorge grew up hearing a phrase he would never forget. Jorge, every living being carries the breath of God. With this teaching, he learned to respect ants, birds, cats, and especially dogs. He loved stray dogs, shared his snacks with them, sat on the sidewalk, and petted those afraid of adults. His mother recounted how he once came home with dirty knees and a little puppy in his arms, saying, "He was trembling. I couldn't leave him alone, Mama." As an adult in the seminary, Jorge was known for always feeding the dogs that lingered around the convent. Even as Archbishop, he never refused a gesture of kindness to an abandoned animal. Faith and tenderness always walked hand in hand in his soul. Therefore, upon becoming Pope and choosing the name Francis, like the saint who loved all creatures, no one was surprised. Nor was it a surprise when one day, a light-furred dog appeared in the Vatican's inner garden and, inexplicably, laid down at the Pope's feet as if it already knew him. Francis simply smiled, knelt with effort, and whispered, "Balthazar," back in the present. The search for Balthazar became urgent. A car was immediately dispatched to Castel Gandolfo. Inside, Sister Domenica held the dog in her arms, stroking his head tenderly. "He knows, my son, he knows," she murmured to the driver. Balthazar, who hadn't eaten well in days, trembled now, but not from fear. His eyes were fixed on the road ahead, as if he knew exactly where he was going. Time seemed to race against them all. In the Pope's room, vital signs were stable but fragile. His breathing was soft, almost like a whispered prayer. When the car arrived, Balthazar jumped out without hesitation. He didn't bark or pull the leash, just walked as if each step were guided by something greater. The Vatican corridor seemed to recognize his pause. Guards opened the way. Sisters lowered their heads. And then, before the door to the room, Balthazar stopped. No one knew what he would do, or if there was still time. Balthazar stood at the door, a silent sentinel guided by an unseen connection. As the door opened slowly, what awaited inside wasn't just a man and his dog, but a reunion of souls, a sacred moment where time itself seemed to pause in reverence with profound, unspoken bond between them. But in that instant, as the door opened slowly, everyone present understood something. The reunion about to happen wasn't just between a man and his dog. It was between two souls who had walked side by side, perhaps created for this very moment. Balthazar walked as if he knew. His steps were calm but firm, without agitation or fear. The Vatican corridor seemed to recognize the sound of his pause, as if time itself had shifted to a slower, more solemn frequency. A dog walking among Swiss guards with such dignity. He almost seemed to wear an invisible cassock himself. Reaching the door, he paused, not from fear, but as if seeking permission, understanding the sacredness within. Sister Domenica's hands trembled as she touched the doorknob. She glanced at a guard who gave a slight nod of approval. And then the door opened. Inside, silence reigned. Light filtered through a white curtain. The Pope lay still, eyes closed, head slightly tilted, fingers resting on his chest, his face radiating peace. Balthazar didn't bark or run. He simply entered, all eyes fixed on the animal. For a moment, it was as if everyone forgot it was a dog. There was something larger, ancient, spiritual. Balthazar approached the bed, stopped beside it, looked at the Pope's face, and sat down. He remained motionless, ears slightly drooped, eyes fixed on the man he loved so dearly, as if waiting for a sign, a word, a sigh. But nothing happened. A nurse discreetly wiped a tear. One of the cardinals silently withdrew, overcome with emotion. Everything was so simple, yet so profound. Minutes passed, and Balthazar didn't move, a sentinel, a guardian of love. Slowly, the Pope moved his fingers, an almost imperceptible gesture, like reaching for something just beyond grasp, but his eyes remained closed. Balthazar noticed. He leaned in, lay down beside the bed, resting his muzzle on the sheet very close to the Pope's hand. Still no contact, but the gesture was enough. It felt like an embrace in the invisible realm of pure feeling. Sister Domenica withdrew, knowing this moment wasn't meant to be witnessed, but felt from afar. Outside, the sun began to dip behind the basilica's dome, painting the sky gold and orange, while Rome, indifferent to this intimate instant, kept its hurried pace. But inside, time had stopped. With Balthazar resting faithfully by his side, a silent vigil began. As night fell over Rome and the Pope drifted between worlds, what almost imperceptible sign passed between them, an unspoken communication witnessed only by the deepening silence of the room. While outside, prayers began to rise, Balthazar closed his eyes. The Pope breathed shallowly, almost imperceptibly. No sound, no words, just a rhythm of time breathing. It was then that something nearly unseen occurred. The Pope opened his eyes for a fleeting moment. He said nothing, but his lips moved, and no one there knew for sure what he whispered. Balthazar lifted his head, looked at the Pope's face, tilted his body slightly, and drew near with care, as if the moment's fragility could shatter with any abrupt movement. But there was no kiss, no contact yet, just closeness, presence, absolute respect. In the adjacent room, the Pope's personal secretary received messages from around the globe, embassies, religious leaders, politicians, the faithful, all asking about the Pontiff's condition. But none knew what was truly happening in that precise instant. A dog, a room, and a man suspended between earth and sky. Meanwhile, a persistent memory surfaced in Balthazar's mind. If dogs truly remember as we do, perhaps they remember with their bodies, their sense of smell, their souls. He remembered Francis's hurried steps to the garden, the low voice full of pauses, the calloused hands that knew how to bless and caress with the same tenderness. He remembered afternoons sitting together under the shade of an olive tree, where the Pope would simply watch him, as one thanks God for the beauty of simplicity. And now he was there, firm, loyal, present. Time passed. The room lights were dimmed. Balthazar didn't move. For hours, he remained there, a four-legged sentinel, an angel of white fur. And so, it was at night people began to realize something was happening, that the Pope no longer responded to calls, that his soul was slowly withdrawing. In the Vatican courtyard, footsteps echoed emptily. A light breeze made the bells sway high in the tower. Some of the faithful, without knowing exactly why, began lighting candles before an image of St. Francis. A solemn calm filled the air. This quiet testament of loyalty between man and animal reflects a deep, God-given connection that resonates within us all. If you feel the power of this unspoken love and wish for God's continued blessings upon all his creatures, great and small, take a moment to affirm this by typing amen in the comments below. Let it be a prayer for recognizing the divine presence in all life. As dawn approached and the world outside held its breath, Balthazar remained steadfast. What final, silent act of devotion would mark these last hours? And how did a message from Assisi perfectly capture the essence of the man the world was about to lose? Inside the room, Balthazar finally lay down beside the bed. There was no farewell yet, but the silence grew increasingly full of meaning. And so night fell. Francis lying down, Balthazar awake, the world suspended. The Vatican didn't sleep that night. Lights remained on, soft like invisible candles scattered through the corridors. There were careful footsteps, hushed whispers, prayers made with closed eyes and open hearts. It was as if everyone knew, without needing words, that an era was ending. In the Pope's room, the atmosphere was one of reverence. Balthazar wouldn't leave the bedside, having chosen a spot on the left where his body touched the cold marble floor, but his muzzle rested on the white sheet. He breathed calmly, as if listening to the heart rhythm of the man who gave him his name and shelter. The Pope didn't speak. His eyes remained closed. Sometimes a slight twitch of his fingers, sometimes a sigh that seemed heavy with memories. But it was as if he were already navigating between two worlds, suspended between the now and the eternal. This was no longer just a man. It was a presence, a living history reaching its final point before becoming eternal memory. Hours earlier, a letter had arrived at the Vatican from the Franciscan community in Assisi, a brief handwritten message. If Francis departs tonight, know that he will be among the birds, the dogs, the trees, and all those he knew how to love with tender eyes. He will be remembered as one who not only spoke of God, but saw him in every creature. The letter was read quietly by an aide, and strangely, Balthazar lifted his head at the end, remaining motionless, as if understanding, as if waiting for those words. In the next room, two nuns prepared an arrangement of olive branches and white flowers, not for aesthetics, but for symbolism. The olive branch represented peace and the promise of life after the flood, the faith that a new beginning would always come. But for the dog, there were no symbols, only the absence of sound and the presence of something invisible he seemed to feel with every fiber of his being. As dawn broke, pushing back the darkness, Balthazar remained the faithful guardian. While prayers formed spontaneously outside, what final, quiet moments of connection unfolded within the room, solidifying the unspoken bond between the departing soul and his loyal companion. Outside, the night sky began to break into shades of blue. It was still dawn, but the first timid rays of sunrise gently pushed back the darkness, as if the world were preparing itself modestly for what was to come. Balthazar remained lying down. Once he rose slowly, circled the bed, sniffed the Pope's pillow, then returned to his spot without a sound, without a bark, the guardian. Meanwhile, in Buenos Aires, where it all began, an elderly woman lit a candle before an image of St. Francis. She didn't know exactly why, but felt something in her chest. "He is leaving," she said simply, and a tear fell unhurriedly. In the room, someone entered. A young priest, newly arrived from Latin America, who had met the Pope personally just months before. He approached slowly, knelt in a corner, and prayed silently. Balthazar turned his face towards him, observing him for long seconds, then turned his eyes back to the bed. The priest would later write, I have never seen a dog look with such depth. It was as if he already knew what no one could say, and yet he remained there in silence, waiting. Dawn advanced. Outside, some of the faithful began gathering in prayer, a spontaneous chain of faith forming little by little. Lit candles, rosaries between fingers, words murmured against the wind. There was no official announcement, but love gives notice beforehand. Inside the room, the Pope's breathing was light, rhythmic. His eyes didn't open again, but he still seemed to listen, seemed present, though distant. Balthazar stood once more, took 2 steps forward, rested his muzzle on the Pope's right hand lying on his chest. He stayed there still. Time seemed frozen in that gesture. One of the aides brought a hand to their mouth, stifling a sob, but no one dared move. In that moment, silence spoke more than any prayer. A full silence, heavy with unshed tears burning in the chest. This story of quiet devotion and the profound bond between Francis and Balthazar touches upon the universal nature of love and loyalty that God instills in his creation. If moments like these resonate with you, reminding you of the beauty in simple connections, please support our channel by liking this video and subscribing. Your support allows us to continue sharing stories that speak to the heart and uplift the spirit. Balthazar lay down one last time, closer now, his body against the sheet, eyes closed. As the first rays of sun touched the basilica dome outside, the bells began to toll, not with alarm, but with serene continuity. What did this final scene signify? And how did the world react when the news finally broke, solidifying the legacy of a pope who saw God in every creature? Okay, vamos finalizar com o capítulo 7 de Historia de Francisco y Balthazar. Chapter 7, Third Narrative. Balthazar lay down for the last time, closer now, body against the sheet, eyes closed, and moved no more. Outside, the first rays of sun touched the top of St. Peter's Basilica dome. The sky was clear, the breeze gentle, and Rome seemed to pause for a few moments, unaware that in that very second, something sacred was about to happen. The departure itself wasn't like in the movies. It was realer, quieter, more sacred, and yet more indescribable. The sun had already risen when the bells began to toll. Not an alarm, nor a hurried call, but serene, continuous ringing that sounded like a prayer cast in bronze. The bells announced that time had shifted. The Pope's room was calm. Soft light entered through open curtains, illuminating the white sheet and Francis's serene face. He had departed peacefully. No agitation, no dramatic last breath, just a slight loosening of the fingers, a profound silence, and the certainty that a soul had returned home. But he didn't go alone. Balthazar was there, lie beside the bed, muzzle still touching the fabric. Only when the bells began to ring did he stand up. No one called him, no one told him what to do. But the dog took 2 steps to the center of the room, looked around, and then lay down facing the window, as if watching, as if telling the world, I stay here until he is at peace. Shortly after, the Pope's body was prepared, dressed simply as he always wished, a small wooden rosary in his hand, a gift from an African girl. Balthazar was taken to an inner garden, but remained calm, seated, looking at the sky, his chest rising and falling slowly. When someone tried to call him, he simply glanced and returned his gaze upward. The world learned the news. It spread like the wind. Crowds formed. People wept, prayed, sang, brought flowers, or simply stood in silence. A deep, different kind of commotion, spiritual, inexplicable, as if the world had lost a father, a friend. That night, St. Peter's Square filled spontaneously with faithful from everywhere, drawn by an inner call. Candles were lit, photos placed, letters left. Among the images, one recurred. St. Francis of Assisi surrounded by animals, as if the people were saying, he is gone, but he left us love for all creation. Pope Francis left many lessons, speaking of compassion, justice, humility, faith, forgiveness, and hope. But one of the most beautiful was his love for animals, respect for every living being, understanding that each creature carries God's breath. He showed us that no creature is too small for love, and that a dog's loyalty can be truer than 1,000 sermons. Do you believe animals are blessed creatures of God, possessing souls, feelings, and the capacity for unconditional love? Share your thoughts and where you're watching from in the comments below. Let's spread this message of reverence for all life. The story of Francis and Balthazar is a testament to a love that transcends words. There are more stories of faith and connection waiting for you. To continue exploring inspiring moments like this, click on the video now appearing on your screen. Discover another message meant to touch your soul.